Welcome, one and all, to another overrated review, or just a review at this point that we're going to call it. And today's guest, is Final Fantasy XVI. And I personally am going to straight up say I did not like this game, nearly to the extent that I thought I was going to like it. So let's discuss this now, because it's going to be a wild ride. So buckle up, buckaroo. Let's go. In Final Fantasy XVI, you play as Clive, and only Clive for the most part. Stupid name also, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. Your goal is basically to free your people, destroy the Mother Crystals, and save the world. It is definitely a Final Fantasy plot, I will give them that. I just don't think it's told necessarily as well as other Final Fantasy plots, whether that be 7, 8, 9, 10, you name it. This one is somewhere in the middle of all the Final Fantasy games, and that's about all I'm going to say as far as what it is like it compared to other Final Fantasy games, because here's the biggest problem I had with this game, is it's not really a Final Fantasy game, nor is it a very well thought out and quality RPG for that matter. But let's knock out some of the positives here. For starters, I do like the graphics and the visuals. Breathtaking, very, very nice to look at. This is a pretty game. I spent a lot of time in the photo mode, and I've definitely enjoyed that. I also have to commend the voice acting. Cid's in particular, for example, highlight. Very awesome. The voice acting from beginning to end at least was very well done, so I have nothing against that. And for the start of it, you know, when you start playing the game and you get into the action commands, you start learning how you need to dodge and you do engage in the combat, it's okay. It's okay. The problem is that it started off strong, and I said to myself, I can't wait to see how they elevate this gameplay. And they don't elevate the gameplay at all. It becomes a rinse and repeat for the rest of the 35-hour slog. And I want to make this perfectly clear, I have zero problems with them focusing more on an action RPG than a turn-based. I know a lot of people had their gripes with that. I don't. Final Fantasy has plenty of action-based RPGs at this point. I have zero qualms with that. But if you're going to give me an action-based game and still have it under that RPG and under that Final Fantasy umbrella, there are a few things that are missing in this game that desperately needed to be in here. For example, there are no elemental attacks in this game. I do not understand why I can attack a bomb, a fire elemental based enemy, with fire magic, and it does the same damage as ice, wind, earth, you name it. It's all the same at the end of the day. And there are also no status effects in this game either, which is strange, because imagine my surprise when I got hit with bad breath, only to discover that I can't succumb to sleep, berserk, confuse, poison, you name it. None of that is here, which is basically, status effects are a staple in RPGs, so the fact that they're gone is just perplexing to me, because it definitely could have elevated the combat a little bit more and gave me more to deal with, rather than learning how to dodge, hit my enemies, cause them to stagger, unleash my specials, and repeat the process, because that is literally all you do in 90% of all the fights within the game. Using items has also been stripped down to basically nothing, where you can use Strength Tonic, a potion, or an elixir, and that's it. Because you see, there's no special items really. The only items you will get along the way are crafting items, and the crafting system in this game straight up sucks. There's not a lot here going on in the crafting system. I don't even know why they bothered with it, because it's so rudimentary. It's almost embarrassing to think that a game in 2023 can have this level of crafting system that feels like it belonged in 1995 at best. It is not that great. And the fact that I can't use items that are staples in Final Fantasy, like Phoenix Down, for example, is also frustrating, because I can't play as any of the other party members except for Clive and only Clive. I don't know why I can't play as Torgal or Cid or Jill or Gav or anybody that comes along during the journey. But even in the combat, they exist and they do attack the enemies, but for the most part, they're just there to distract some enemies. But when they get hit, they don't lose health. You don't have to recover them. You don't have to worry about them. They can get beaten to a pulp and they still will get back up and they're just there. And it's so disappointing, because they spent so much time giving these characters life, but in the combat, they're just there for the sake of being there. It would be like playing Kingdom Hearts and Donald and Goofy don't do anything. I don't get it. And don't even get me started about Gil, which is basically used to buy things that you don't really need, because you'll have more than enough of it. Its real and only purpose in this game is to provide you with music selections for your hideout. You can buy certain music selections, and that's really it, which is stupid in my opinion. I'm sorry, it's just so dumb. that they didn't even use Gil appropriately. I mean, take for example a game like Final Fantasy X, where you can use Gil for items and weapons, and you can literally purchase a summon. You can use it to bribe other monsters so you can get cool things from them. You can draft Blitzball players with Gil. Gil is always useful in a game like Final Fantasy X, but that game came out 2 decades ago, and we've basically gone back to Final Fantasy games from the early 90s in terms of how useful Gil is. That's just how rudimentary, again, everything has become in this Final Fantasy game. I also can't help but wonder why the pacing is so all over the place in this game. Why are some of the highs, like super memorable moments, so cool, only for you to have to spend the next 5 to 10 hours feel like slogging through areas where there's nothing. It's this beautiful world and there's just nothing there other than to fight some monsters. Occasionally you'll get a side quest, but most of the side quests honestly felt like you're either gathering plants, you're playing the role of waiter and delivering food to people at the hideout, which I don't know why Clive would do that, but that's a whole nother thing in and of itself. And you go investigate, some missing person who's either alive or has been killed by bandits and or thieves. It's just... pacing is awful in this game, and it would have been more entertaining if there were side activities like in most Final Fantasy games at this point, but there's not. You can't even go fishing in this game, and this would have been a perfect game for fishing because there's a lot of water here and it would have been really fun. But no extra activities whatsoever except to engage in the monster board, which is basically go run around the empty, lifeless areas and fight more monsters, which is what you've been doing the entire time anyways. It's so tenuous. Oh, did I mention there are no job classes. You can't play as a dragoon or a thief, and there are no thief skills either, for that matter. You can't steal like you would expect to in a Final Fantasy or any RPG game whatsoever, but you can steal. You can't be a dragoon. You can't be a monk. You can't really be a black mage. You can't be a white mage. You can't be a blue mage. You can't be a lancer. You can't be anything. You really can't do anything in this game that you're accustomed to doing in a Final Fantasy game. It makes me even wonder why they bothered calling this Final Fantasy XVI, because the only reason it's even Final Fantasy is because they stuck Ifrit back in here, and Shiva's back here, and all of those guys, Rama and Titan and Bahamut, and they're all back, and that's probably the only thing that's even remotely Final Fantasy in this game. And don't get me wrong, they're cool. The cutscenes are really cool. Seeing Bahamut face off against Odin was a really cool moment. I really enjoyed it. But the highs are super high and everything else is on the bottom of the barrel and it's hit the frickin' ground floor. And that includes the crafting and the Gil uses and the fact that everything that you know about Final Fantasy and RPGs has been stripped down. And if I'm being perfectly honest, even if you don't classify this as an RPG or as a Final Fantasy game, it's still an action game that isn't on par with other action games like Astral Chain or Bayonetta or Devil May Cry. I mean, pick one. All of those action games are more satisfying, and I think the big reason they are is because they don't have all of the pacing issues that this game has. I think the big thing that Square Enix decided to do with Final Fantasy XVI is they chose to focus on the spectacle. And it is flashy, and it is a beautiful game, and I didn't actually have any issues with the performance like some other people said. I'm not going to dock it for that, because I didn't experience any issues that were noticeable enough for me to be upset about. But they gave it their all in the cinematics, but they forgot what Final Fantasy and RPGs and even action games are supposed to be, which are well fleshed out overall experiences that give you something satisfying from beginning to end and not only through certain segments. Imagine if you played Bayonetta and what you had to do for 4 hours before you got to your next amazing cinematic fight was just talk to people and go through town, and Bayonetta has to go shopping and she has to go deliver presents to people. Picture that in a Bayonetta game and you would get very upset. And they did that here in Final Fantasy XVI. They focused everything they had on the cinematics and the spectacle and the flash, but they left out all of the sustenance that I personally crave. And if I could give you one more analogy, Final Fantasy XVI is like a Thanksgiving feast. You go there, you see the turkey, it is a delicious looking turkey, but at the end of the day, that's all it's offering is a delicious looking turkey. There are no sides. There's no mashed potatoes. There's no pumpkin pie or potato pie. You don't get corn or yams or anything that you're accustomed to. You get a delicious looking turkey, and that turkey, while it doesn't taste bad, it's also slightly dry. It's dry too, so it's just a disappointing feast overall. And Final Fantasy XVI is exactly that, a disappointing Thanksgiving dinner. This concludes my review of Final Fantasy XVI. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. Be sure to leave a like or dislike, and I expect anybody who watches this will probably leave a dislike because everybody and their dog seems to really like this game, and hey, good for you. I didn't, and I'm letting you know. I am Bradley Overrated, out like a trout. Praise be to Yevon from a much better Final Fantasy game, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.